Hey everybody, Thyworm here with a new video. I'm trying to do something a little bit different. I just asked myself a question the other day, yesterday, and I was wondering, like, do streamers actually represent the community? And if they don't, what are the implications? And then typically, today at least, I'm talking mostly about Path of Exile, right? So the reason I was thinking about this is that I'm hearing a lot of complaints and negativity from quite a few streamers as well. So Might's video was really negative, and I'm listening to various podcasts, and also there people are complaining an awful lot. Quite a few content creators made bold claims about endgame being dead and whatnot, and in the meantime I already clocked 250 hours this league alone. I have around 2100 hours in total since I started playing more seriously in the Betrayal League, and I noticed that my experience of the game doesn't really align with that of many streamers. And while I see some of their arguments, not too many of those arguments actually affect me. I'm having quite a bit of fun still with the game, and I almost feel that I'm wrong in having fun, that I'm being naive or something, that this is actually not that good of a game. And that just feels a little bit weird, and I was just wondering, like, how do I end up here, right? Like, how did I get there? So I was watching two podcasts yesterday. I was watching Stalling from Ziz and Faded Connections from Catmaster OP and I think Baylor Mage, right? I like those podcasts. They're fun podcasts. It's a bunch of banter and different opinions, and I like seeing all the different views of the game. But I also realized something, and that is that these streamers, like, they play the game an awful lot, right? It's basically their job. And Ziz at some point said that he had 23,000 hours into the game. That's 10 times the amount of hours that I have in the game, right? And he's not really an exception either. Like, that's pretty standard for streamers. Like, they've been playing for 8 years or 20,000 hours or 15,000 hours, right? It's insane, really, if you think about it. And I think that I am already in like the top 1% of players, at least on playtime, and probably by now on game knowledge as well. Most of the players that play Path of Exile, they never really even make it to maps, let alone that they do some actual end game content like Shaper or Elder or Ceres or Uber Aziri or anything like that, right? I'm really curious about this, but I don't really think, for example, that too many people killed Maven already, even though she is now existing for the second league, this league. But then you look at streamers and they play for 8 hours a day at a very minimum. Playing PoE is their job, and most of them treat it that way. If you don't, then you have a tendency to burn out, like some I did, for example. And just like with a job, I would say that you tend to want to optimize the game, right? You want to optimize your working environment. You want it to be as frictionless as possible. You want to make your life easier. You want to make your job more fun in that regard, because you'll be doing a job for a long time, right? Not playing PoE on stream is a huge risk. People won't watch you then, and when you play something else, you easily lose 80% of the viewers in most cases, and that could equal 80% of your income as well, depending a bit on how many sponsorships you do and other contractual obligations that you have. And I'm not saying that there aren't any players that approach the game in the same way. I think there are plenty of them, but they typically don't really have a voice. Like, they might be a name on the forums or whatnot, but the streamers are typically the people who have a lot of reach, right? Because they are the streamers. But if you look at most players, and I would consider myself even more like the top end, I guess, of most players, I am fairly casual, but then again, like 250 hours this league alone is not that casual, right? But most players, like, they have a job, or they have college, or they have other obligations in their life. Maybe they're married, they got kids, something like that, right? I have a job as well, by the way. It's just that, like, these days there's really not much else to do, so I play a lot of PoE next to my full-time job. But most other people's, they only play a few hours a day, right? They play potentially rather long in terms of like lead time within the league, but how many of them do even kill the series, right? On Awakening level 5? It's not that many, I'm sure. So this got me thinking, and I'm like, well, you know, streamers, they represent the community, but they aren't really a good representation of the community. And it got me thinking back about the hours of Ziz, right? 23,000 hours. If you calculate that to an actual job, it is someone doing a job for 12 years, considering you have 4 weeks of holiday each year. That is absolutely nuts, right? It's completely insane. Imagine playing a game for 40 hours a week for 12 years and getting paid for it. I mean, if you think about it from that perspective, it is kind of a miracle that Scissorin, at least occasionally, is still having fun in PoE. As a matter of fact, he's having a lot of fun, I think. He's doing these lab runs and everything. I follow him quite a bit. He seems like super interested still in the game, but that is nothing short of a miracle after 23,000 hours. And I think someone like Scissorin is typically a very optimistic guy, right? He creates the video guides. He's always very optimistic on stream. He doesn't really complain all that much. I mean, sure, he has his videos where he talks about like that he doesn't really like how, I don't know, Conqueror's loot is distributed in the game these days. And I'm like, yeah, I can see where you're coming from, but like, is this really affecting anyone? Like, really? And so I think that streamers in general, they tend to take a lot for granted, right? Including the fun things, because they've been playing for so long. Like, just simply, they don't notice it anymore. And streamers tend to be a bit more critical, or a lot more critical, because PoE is basically their job, right? And like I said, they want their job to be as frictionless and as fun as possible, and that's just not the case if you play something for 23,000 hours. And last but not least, streamers tend to point out issues that are really only issues for them and a select group of people, a very small margin of people. I just want to make it clear, like, I'm not against feedback or anything. I mean, I've made plenty of videos myself providing feedback on either a game or whatnot, or a game system or game mechanics or something like that, right? And the previous video of yesterday was similar. It's also feedback. I'm not against feedback, that's not the point. I just feel the negative sentiment doesn't really align with my experiences, and maybe not with yours either. And I feel popular content creators may have more impact with their statements than they realize, even if a lot of those statements don't impact 95% of the player base. It's probably a large part of their community as well. And then I'm talking, for example, about criticism on 100% delirium maps, right? Or criticism on high-end crafting, and that it now always ends with aisling slamming. Or criticism on loot distribution from conquerors, or criticism on the headhunter, etc. These are critiques that are not necessarily invalid or irrelevant, but they are critiques that are only relevant to an extremely small part of the population playing this actual game. Nobody else really should care about headhunters because they have probably never got a headhunter themselves, right? Because these things tend to be very expensive. And so I guess my point in this video is that maybe you should listen a little bit less as to what content creators are complaining about, and think more for yourself if you're having fun or not. Like, don't worry too much about making currency or following the meta builds. Just play the game the way you like it. You will fail, you will learn, and in 2 months everybody starts from scratch again, right? With a new league start. You can make your own fun in the game. There's so much to do. And if you're not having fun, just quit, right? I mean, you can keep complaining and complaining about it, but nobody's forcing you to play this game. I mean, you're not the streamer, most likely. You can just play anything else without any repercussions. It's a free game. Because that's what I'm doing, at least this league and the last couple of leagues as well. I do take notice of all the farming strategies out there and the different builds out there, and I do listen to all the feedback and the podcasts and whatnot. But in the end of the day, I try to not let it impact me too much, because otherwise you get overwhelmed by the negativity and you actually start thinking that this is a bad game, which is simply not true, right? You may not like the game, and that's fine, but it's not a bad game. It's actually a very good game, and I don't think there are many other games out there that can compete with Path of Exile currently or in the near future. And I, for example, really like the hot take of Lily on Twitter, saying basically that, you know, people complaining about the game, you're right if you complain about like the issues like texture streaming and whatnot, that's kind of messed up, but everything else, just admit that you don't like the game. There's nothing wrong with it. Move on, go to another game. There's plenty of games. I guess I just wanted to put that out there. This is a little bit of a different video for sure, and I'm really curious what your thoughts are. So if you enjoy content like this, let me know by liking the video, by disliking the video, as long as YouTube still lets you do that. You can sub for more content. Thanks for watching. Love you all. Bye bye.